Today, we're going to uncover the story of a chemical that was once praised as a global savior. But this so-called miracle had a really dark, hidden side that came dangerously close to silencing nature itself. This is the story of DDT.
So, this is the core question we're going to dig into. Just imagine a chemical that could save millions of people from disease and hunger. A true modern miracle, right? Now, what if that exact same miracle was, at the same time, causing the silent, unseen destruction all over the planet?
You know, this wasn't just some hypothetical idea. In the middle of the 20th century, this image you see here, planes just blanketing entire fields with a chemical called DDT, well, that was the very picture of progress. It quickly became one of the most widely used pesticides on Earth, and for a while, it really did seem like the perfect solution.
To really understand the shocking twist in the story, we first have to appreciate why everybody celebrated DDT. It honestly seemed like a miracle, like it was solving two of humanity's oldest and biggest problems: disease and hunger.
The effectiveness of DDT was just staggering. During World War II, it was absolutely critical in stopping insects that spread horrible diseases like typhus and malaria, saving who knows how many lives. Then, after the war, farmers totally embraced it to protect their crops from pretty much any pest you can think of. It was powerful, it was versatile, and maybe most importantly, it was incredibly cheap.
So for more than a decade, DDT seemed to have no downside at all. It was the hero chemical, you know? It brought together public health and agriculture in this big global fight against pests. But this perfect solution, it was about to show its devastating flaw.
Turns out, this miracle chemical had a hidden flaw, and it was a huge one. It was this fundamental problem that would completely change how we understand the way chemicals and ecosystems work together.
So, after about 10 years of widespread use, scientists started to find some really disturbing signs. In places where DDT had been sprayed a lot, they were finding dead birds, dead fish, and other animals. Something was clearly wrong, and they had to figure out what was going on in the soil and the water.
So scientists uncovered two critical things about it. First, DDT is incredibly persistent. It doesn't break down easily, so it just hangs around in the soil and water for decades. Second, it's fat-soluble. Now, what that means is that instead of getting flushed out of an animal's body, it gets stored and trapped in its fatty tissues. That combination, well, it turned out to be a recipe for ecological disaster. And this led scientists to a concept we now call biomagnification. I know, it's a bit of a mouthful, but the idea is actually pretty simple and really powerful. Toxins don't just spread, they climb. They get more and more concentrated as they move up from one level of the food chain to the next.
And this is exactly how it works. DDT starts out in the environment in pretty low concentrations. Tiny little organisms absorb it, then a small fish comes along and eats thousands of those organisms, and all that DDT starts to build up. Then, a larger fish eats a bunch of those smaller fish, concentrating the toxin even more. By the time it gets to the top of the food chain, the consequences are just devastating.
So you see, at each and every step up the food chain, the dose of DDT gets more and more potent. By the time it reaches those top predators, the levels are magnified to a truly lethal degree. And this wasn't just a theory, not at all. It led to some awful, real-world consequences for wildlife, and it ended up sparking one of the biggest environmental crises of the 20th century. And this is the heartbreaking result. For birds of prey at the very top of the food chain, we're talking about eagles and ospreys, that high concentration of DDT messed with their ability to produce strong eggshells. The shells became so thin and fragile that they would often just break under the weight of the parent bird, who was just trying to keep them warm.
The effect was absolutely catastrophic. An entire generation of these incredible birds was basically wiped out before it even had a chance to hatch. Populations of eagles, falcons, and hawks just plummeted all across North America. The very symbols of the wild were just disappearing. This crisis is what pushed the scientist and writer Rachel Carson to publish her landmark book in 1962, Silent Spring. Her warning was as powerful as it was poetic. If we kept going down this path, we'd soon face a spring where there were no birds left to sing. And that book, it was a global wake-up call.
Carson's book did way more than just raise awareness. It sparked a whole movement. It was that crucial turning point that took public concern and turned it into real, concrete environmental action.
You can see the direct line here clear as day. Silent Spring comes out in '62, and it grabs the public's attention. All that pressure leads to government action, and by the 1970s, countries like the US and Canada banned or severely restricted DDT. And the best part? It worked. With less of that chemical out there, the bird populations that had been hit so hard began that long, slow journey to recovery.
But, the story doesn't just end there. Banning DDT in some parts of the world didn't make the chemical just vanish. Its legacy is way more complicated, and it presents us with a very real dilemma that we're still dealing with today.
And here's the heart of that dilemma. On one hand, the risks are crystal clear. We know DDT sticks around in the environment and that it harms wildlife through biomagnification. But on the other hand, it is still one of the most effective and cheapest ways to control mosquitoes that carry malaria, a disease that still kills hundreds of thousands of people every single year.
So ultimately, the story of DDT is so much more than a history lesson. It's a really powerful reminder that sometimes our solutions can create totally new, unforeseen problems. A miracle in one decade can have consequences that ripple through ecosystems for generations. Which leaves us with this final, really critical question, and there are no easy answers here. The DDT story forces us to face these complex trade-offs that we're constantly up against. How do we protect human health without sacrificing the health of our planet? It's a balance we are still trying to find.